Welcome to Bayou Time. I'm Jacob DeGate, and it's my pleasure to introduce Louisiana Representative Jerome Zeringue. Thank you very much for joining us again. We always enjoy having you on.
Good to see you, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
All right. It's my understanding you're recently coming back, or recently are about to have a revenue estimate conference. You know, of course, the budget's always a big thing upcoming that we have to look at. Can you tell us, what are some of the issues that we'll be facing next year?
The budget keeps the state's lights on. Yeah. So the revenue estimating conference is meeting tomorrow. Okay. And just as you know, and for the folks out there, the Revenue Estimating Conference is essentially the entity that establishes how much money the state can use and how much it budgets. You know, in previous times, when Governor Edwards and others were out here, just a group of guys would sit in a room and say, well, we think the state will have $4 billion, and then they just budget $4 billion. But now there's actually a method to the madness. There is the Revenue Estimating Conference, which has the President of the Senate, the Speaker of the House, Jay Darden, the Commissioner of Administration, and an economist who sits on it. It's Dr. Barnes. He's an economist in UL, and he is providing a lot of the financial background and information. In addition to staff, both the House and the Senate have their own fiscal staff, as well as the administration, that help put together the anticipated revenue. So you look at what we have in the state budget, what is projected, that either is spent or not spent, and then looking at the economy, projections for the economy, what they anticipate we'll have, what we will have next year. All indications are that tomorrow they will identify a surplus, somewhere around 700 million, something like that. And with the budget, 25% goes to the rainy day fund, which, by the way, the rainy day fund has been in the best position it's been in a long time. It's going to be, right now, it's a little over close to $800 million. Okay. And considering the weather outside, it's always good to have a good rainy day fund. And then another 10% can go up to the unfunded accrued liability, which we've made significant inroads in reducing that overall state debt for the unfunded accrued liability. So after that, we'll probably have about $450 million that can be used for infrastructure and other projects.
Well, that certainly sounds good. Now, of course, I believe last year we had a surplus as well?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And, some of the things that go into surplus, does it have to do with, rebuilding after the hurricanes, or what are some of the factors that you think come into play?
Yeah, most of it is in the past few years that we've had surpluses was basically from the federal government and the rescue plan and other infrastructure dollars that the federal government provided, post-COVID and others to help states and entities make it through the economy downturn that we had. And to the credit of the state, both in the House and the Senate, we worked on making sure that we addressed with that funding critical needs, not growing government, but reducing debt and put it to infrastructure on one-time dollars. So that was important in benefiting the state long term, put those dollars to good use. But the economy is still, the numbers are indicating that they're pretty good. And again, that's how the state makes its money: personal income tax, sales tax, and there's other revenue sources, but predominantly those are the two. And the sales tax dollars have been steady. Now, whether or not that's, the post-Ida, some of that, there's no doubt that has an influence. It's definitely not as big as what it was post-Katrina. Nice. But there's also problems, and we'll talk about that in a little bit regarding the insurance. That's a whole nother issue. But the fact of the matter is there were, primarily because of the federal government and the other things that have provided the opportunity to afford that excess surplus that we have. Now, the unfortunate reality is, in another year, the next fiscal year, with the quarter-cent sales tax is going to roll off. That's going to be a problem. That's going to be about a $450 million hit to the budget. In addition, there was legislation that was passed. Now, it's well-intended, but it's the auto sales tax dollars that typically would go into the state general fund are now going to be redirected to roads and bridges and infrastructure. So that is going to be, it's going to be 300, 350 this year. It's going to get up to about 400 by the time the quarter cent rolls off. So we will be faced with, within the next year or so, a $800 million deficit that we'll have to address. And if the economy doesn't improve to that degree, we're going to have to look at making some cuts.
The cuts, is there any talk yet about, potentially renewing that sales tax, or is that politically dead in the water?
Well, taxes and increasing revenue it's going to be tough right now. And
that's what I would think as well.
Yeah, it will be.
Especially, you coming towards the end of the governor's term, that always comes into play as well. But some interesting decisions to make. Now, is it all the conference itself? Is it just all planning about the projections, or do you go into anything about what you're going to do with the surplus, or that just comes later?
Well, actually, interestingly enough, part of what the intention with REC is going to do is look at recognizing some of the dollars that Commissioner Donnellan hopes to utilize to maybe provide some incentives for insurance companies to come back into the market. And until that the only way that can happen is if the Revenue Estimating Conference recognizes those dollars. Again, the dollars that we have as surplus that wasn't expended this fiscal year are excess to where it exceeds what was budgeted or projected. So those are the two, in terms of that are going to be providing the additional dollars for the surplus.
I know a lot of people out there have come across the problem of trying to either their current homeowners insurance, either their company went bankrupt or they got canceled and they have to find a new company, but finding a new company can be challenging. In fact, on my way over to the office today, I got a call from the insurance. It's about time for me to renew my insurance a new policy, but the person that had written it before is no longer able to write it, so I'm going to have to go through that process. I know the commissioner of insurance is recognizes that that's a huge problem, that to help, and he wants to do something to help to get those costs down by bringing in more competition. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the things that he's planning, or what may happen with that?
Sure, and again, I feel your pain. In addition to a lot of the other people, I still fielding calls from constituents. There's obviously a lot more post-storm, but we're still experiencing a significant amount of problems with insurance and coverage, and people not getting a response, having to go through, multiple adjusters, and the whole process has really been a problem for the people in the region. And there is going to have to be some changes, and there will be. They're already talking about legislative changes to address the problems. Primarily what has caused so many of the problems here is the fact that a lot of the insurers kind of went cheap on reinsurance, which is a critical aspect in terms of making sure they have enough coverage. We also have a problem in that 23 of people who were previously writing claims in Louisiana are no longer doing that after the storm. Recently, as of yesterday, another one went under. So what Commissioner Donnellan is working to do, similar to what happened after Katrina, there was about $29 million to provide incentives, and I think 5 insurers took advantage of that to come back into the market and write policies. And for doing that, they would receive these grants that would help them provide the coverage or the reinsurance that they would need to get back into the market. So similarly, the commissioner is going to hope that, well, not hope, but is requesting from REC, we mentioned the Revenue Estimating Conference, which we're meeting tomorrow, if they recognize the money that the insurance department, they collect from the insurers, that there's a percentage that they have and they retain for certain issues. So there's anywhere from about $10 to $15 million that he believes that he would be able to have available to provide incentives. Now, for that to happen, first, the Revenue Estimating Conference would have to recognize those dollars. The second thing is that they would have to go before the Joint Legislative Committee on the Budget and get approval to do that, which he thinks he can. And so it's just a matter of them having the access to the dollars and then trying to incentivize these companies to come back in.
Okay, and you mentioned previously about reinsurance, and I know a lot of people out there probably, don't have quite as good a understanding of it, and I certainly don't even as well. Can you explain it a little bit more about what you mean about that?
Sure, and believe me, I'm no expert other than having to live it because like you, I never had a claim on my policy, and after I died, my insurance company left, and I had to find another carrier too, which is a nightmare, believe me. And there's a
Sure.
lot of people who experience it, and I feel for that. In fact, I had two guys call me yesterday. They have problems with LIGA. Their adjusters are giving them less than 30% of what their claim is or their impacts. I mean,
Wow.
it's a lot of people, unfortunately, won't be able to have the resources to rebuild or get back in their homes, and it's sad. And it's because of the problems that we have, and legislatively, we're going to work on trying to do this, but fix that. That's best we can. You'll never fix it. But part of the aspect of the problem that we had is so a lot of companies, when they come in the right business, you have to have the reserves to cover, obviously, there are claims to cover those claims. With storms, big events, catastrophes, obviously they don't have that unless you're a major mega company. Even those get reinsurance. So essentially what they're insuring themselves. They're going out to Lloyd's of London and all these other bigger companies to get insurance for their insurance, that if there is an event that they would have the reserves. Now that's expensive. Translated, it goes over to the people who are actually buying the insurance. The cost is just passed on to the consumer. But to save money, they don't invest as much in that reinsurance, and then when they don't have that money to reinsurance to cover their losses, then they go bankrupt. So now there's LIGA, which is the Louisiana Insurer Guaranteed, which is a nonprofit that was created in 1970, because prior to that, if a company went under, it would have been the insured to actually go to when they were going to diffuse when the company was going under,
bankruptcy
when
and
the
all.
bankruptcy court, they would have to go there and represent themselves. But LIGA was there to cover those losses. The problem is LIGA's asked for a significant increase, and to make that coverage and to bridge that gap. And that's going to be a problem too. But also the insurance of last resort, Louisiana Citizens, is a 63% increase. It's impacting a lot, and that's the only opportunity for some people to get insurance. But there's a significant increase. But part of what they're doing to incentivize companies, one of the conditions is that they take the people off of Citizens to provide them cheaper insurance if they're going to take the grant. There are a few things that, and we could talk a little bit more about it in the next segment if you'd like, but there are things that they're trying to do to work toward ensuring that if we're going to provide incentives for them to come, that we're doing what's in the best interest of the people and those who are insured, especially those within Citizens, which are paying an exorbitant amount for insurance.
I think we're talking a little bit about some of the incentives that may be proposed for helping out some insurance companies to come back and write policies in this area, and also the concern to make sure that translates into a real benefit for the Louisiana, people of that. Can you touch on that a little bit about that? What's going on?
Sure. After Katrina, there was about $29 million that they used, and there were 5 insurers that took advantage of that. So right now we're talking possibly 10 to 15 million, or if there's some available dollars that REC recognizes that may sweeten the pot a bit. But the whole point is it's going to provide some grants for those insurers that they'll come and write policies, with the intent being that they will take people off of Citizens, which is the most expensive. Citizens is required because they can't compete with local insurance companies. They're required to charge 10% higher than the highest within that particular region.
Wow.
So it's kind of non-compete kind of deal. The problem is there's 125,000 policies in Citizens right now, and they're increased it by 63%. So we want to make sure that if we are going to provide incentives, it's going to address that need. The problem is you don't want people who are saying, well, I'll take the incentive, and then just to come back in and write it and then have the same problem, they don't get the reinsurance. So we want to make sure, ideally, those who stuck it out, maybe giving it to them first, and also making sure that they take people off of Citizens, which is most expensive. Because what happens is a lot of these, we talked about reinsurance, a lot of these companies go and get reinsurance in the spring. So if they still have 125 policies and 125,000, they can't unload some of these, They had recently had a 63% increase. If they're going to still have all these policies to try to get that much reinsurance, they're talking about maybe a 75% increase in citizens' policies. And again, if that's your only outlet, that's going to be
Wow.
a crazy amount of money that people go, if they can even afford it.
Sure.
It's going to be more than what, they're required to have insurance, but it's going to be more than they're paying for the mortgage, and be impossible almost for the lot to pay for both.
Sure. Well, it's certainly some problems ahead, but hopefully we got some solutions out there being proposed. Now, if we can move on a little bit, I know there's something else I want to ask you about. It's a program I saw that you had sponsored a bill for dealing with conservation in the outdoors. It's Louisiana Outdoors Forever program. Can you tell us, your purpose behind that bill?
The intent with the Louisiana Outdoors Forever was to try to capitalize on available federal dollars that are earmarked specific to conservation projects. The challenge is they require a match. So this is an attempt to establish, and we're going to work for a recurring revenue source, whether it's looking at some either tourism dollars or something that we currently have, that if you can create a seed, having established, some money to set aside that you can bring down these federal dollars, we can turn $10 to $20 million into $100 million, which they did in Georgia. Georgia, Texas, Florida, they have similar programs, and we didn't have one here in Louisiana, so we wanted to establish one, and this will provide opportunities to provide people access to opportunities to get out and enjoy the outdoors. I mean, Louisiana is, the moniker is a sportsman's paradise.
Sure.
That's our state motto. We want to make sure that people have that opportunity to go experience that, and also protect critical habitat. I mean, if you look at waterfowl, neotropical migrants, and all the other things that are important in fisheries, important to this region, which gives responsible for the fact that we are sportsman's paradise. We want to ensure that not only can we protect some of those resources, but we also want to provide opportunity for people to have access to avail themselves to utilize it for fishing, hunting, and all the other things, birding, camping, and also protecting critical habitat that may be threatened. So it's all those things that will be used, that the local state match will be used to bring down those federal dollars.
Yeah, and it certainly is a problem today regarding access to getting out there, considering if you look back at times our father, grandfather, when they wanted to go out hunt or go out and enjoy the outdoors, they didn't have any specific location that they had to really go to. They had pretty wide open, areas to hunt back then, but now, if you're just trying to get an area to go out and enjoy the outdoors without being, trespassing on somebody's land, it's certainly an issue, and hopefully that's one of the things that, this program can help with.
Well, that, and also because of the fact that the unfortunate reality is, because of coastal land loss and other issues, we're having less in terms of opportunities, or access is being restricted because of the fact that 80% of the coast is in private hands, but also because of the coastal land loss, it's creating, we're losing the habitat. So again, it's to provide access, but also to make sure that we can work with some of the existing projects or agencies to protect that critical habitat, to provide for the resources that we want to enjoy.
Well, certainly, and there's certainly a lot of projects ongoing to help with that conservation. I know you were deeply involved with your time in CPRA, and I know that's something that's near and dear to your heart, and looking out for this area in the coast of Louisiana.
Yeah, and it is near and dear to my heart, because I, like most people in Louisiana, love to enjoy hunting and fishing and getting out there, and want to make sure that we'll still have the opportunity for generations to come to be able to still get out there and enjoy all the opportunities that we do have that are unique here to Louisiana.
All right, well, thanks again for coming on and giving us an update. We certainly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
All right, stay tuned for more right here on HTV.